Ever found yourself tangled in the web of Docker's file and directory manipulation? Well, you're certainly not alone. Docker, a powerful tool used for creating, deploying, and running applications, brings with it a steep learning curve. One of the most crucial aspects of this learning curve involves understanding how to manipulate files and directories within Docker, a task that can be daunting, particularly for beginners. The ability to effectively manipulate files and directories within Docker is not just a nice-to-have skill, but a necessity. It's a fundamental part of managing your applications and can make the difference between a smooth-sailing project and one that feels like navigating through a storm. Many Docker users face challenges when it comes to file manipulation. These challenges range from understanding Docker's file system to mastering the basics and even tackling advanced techniques. But fear not, over the next few minutes, you'll get a clear understanding of how to tackle Docker's file management. To master file manipulation, first, we need to understand Docker's file system. Docker employs a unique system called the Union file system. This system is the underpinning of Docker's lightweight yet powerful architecture. The Union file system allows Docker to create layers of files and directories, which is a stark contrast to traditional systems that deal with entire file systems as one colossal unit. Now, let's break it down further. In Docker's world, images are read-only templates with instructions for creating a Docker container. These images are built up from a series of layers. Each layer corresponds to an instruction in the image's Docker file. Each layer, except for the last one, is read-only. Containers, on the other hand, are a runnable instance of an image. You can think of them as a live version of an image, which means they can be started, stopped, moved, and deleted. Each container has a separate writable layer on top of the image it's based on. This layer is often referred to as the container layer. All changes made to the running container, such as writing new files, modifying existing files, and deleting files, are written to this thin, writable container layer. Lastly, let's talk about volumes. Volumes are the preferred way to persist data generated by and used by Docker containers. While volumes are managed by Docker, you can also choose to store data in a specific location on the host machine using bind mounts, or in memory using TMPFs mounts. So, how do all these elements interact with files and directories? Well, when you create a new container, Docker adds a new thin writable layer on top of the underlying layers. This layer is often referred to as the container layer. All changes made to the running container, such as writing new files, modifying existing files, and deleting files, are written to this thin, writable container layer. A fair understanding of Docker's file system forms the foundation for efficient file manipulation. Now that we've laid the groundwork, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of Docker file manipulation. To truly master Docker, we must grasp the basic commands for manipulating files and directories. This will allow us to interact with and control our Docker containers with precision and ease. First off, let's discuss how to copy files into a Docker container. The command for this is docker cp. The syntax is docker cp source_path container destination path. This command copies the local file or directory at source_path into the container at destination_path. For example, docker cp/home/user/test-file my-container, root, would copy the test file from your home directory into the /root/directory of my-container. Next, let's talk about removing files. The command for this is docker exec. The syntax is docker exec container rm file. This command removes the specified file from the container. For example, docker exec my-container rm/root/test file would remove test file from the /root/directory of my-container. Finally, let's cover moving files around within the container. The command for this is also docker exec. The syntax is docker exec container mv source destination. This command moves the specified file or directory from source to destination within the container. For example, docker exec my container mv/root/test file/root/new directory/ would move test file from the /root/directory to the /root/new directory/directory within my container. These commands are not just for copying, removing, and moving files. They can also be used for directories. The syntax and usage are the same, only the source and destination would be directory paths instead of file paths. These basic commands are your tools to start manipulating files and directories in Docker. They are the building blocks that will enable you to control your Docker environment effectively. Remember, practice makes perfect. So don't be afraid to experiment and learn by doing. And always remember, in the world of Docker, knowledge is power. These basic commands are your tools to start manipulating files and directories in Docker. Ready to take your Docker file manipulation skills up a notch? Let's dive right into some advanced techniques. Consider Docker volumes, a powerful tool for persistent data storage. Docker volumes allow data to persist even after a container stops, making them ideal for storing important data that needs to survive beyond the lifespan of individual containers. To create a volume, use the command docker volume create. To connect it to a container, use the V flag followed by the volume name when running the docker run command. Now let's talk about transferring files between a Docker host and a Docker container. Docker provides a docker cp command, which copies files or directories between a container and your host. The format is docker cp container src path dest _path. This command can be used to copy files either into or out of a container, making it a versatile tool in your Docker toolkit. But remember, Docker containers are ephemeral. They are designed to start, stop, be deleted, and recreated without any loss of service. So, any changes made inside a container that are not written to a volume will be lost when the container is removed. With these advanced techniques, you'll be able to manipulate files and directories in Docker with ease. These tools not only help you manage your data within Docker, but also enhance your workflow efficiency and data integrity. Practice and master them, and you'll be a Docker file manipulation pro in no time. Let's recap what we've learned about Docker file manipulation. We started with a dive into Docker's unique file system, shedding light on its structure and operation. We then explored the fundamental techniques for file manipulation, before moving on to more advanced strategies, enhancing our skills and confidence. With the knowledge of how to effectively manipulate files and directories in Docker, the once intimidating task is now within our grasp. With these skills under your belt, Docker file manipulation should no longer be a daunting task. Happy docking!